Today's guest is one of the few lawyers I really enjoy talking to, Britney Marie Brown. I didn't know the Marie part until today.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and we're going to talk about, maybe a year or so ago. I've worked with Brittany for a while in residential real estate. About a year or so ago, I decided that I was getting killed in taxes being a sole proprietor. Turns out I was. I saved $21,000 in my first year by changing. But I had to go through the work to understand the difference between sole proprietor, LLC, corporation, S-Corp, and Brittany was the one who helped me through that. So, can you give an overview of? We all know paying as a sole proprietor, paying your taxes as a sole proprietor is the worst way in the world. Um, but let's go further than that.
Absolutely. So the sole proprietorship is something that just kind of happens to you as a business owner. When you start a business and you don't fill out any paperwork, you don't do anything with the government, you are a sole proprietor. The downsides of that, as you kind of said, are the taxes, but also liability issues. Your business, and your personal assets are all the same thing. So that's where the different entities come into play with the LLC and the corporation. The LLC is probably the most basic form of a business structure that gives you that liability protection and gives you options for your taxes. The LLC can be taxed as a sole proprietorship, so you are passing that on personally, no extra taxes or tax filings. The corporation gives you the liability protection, but also offers you some additional tax savings, especially with the federal government. You have additional deductions that you're able to take to get those benefits.
There is a little bit more compliance issues with the corporation. We have to say right away. My
Absolutely.
accountant cost me a little bit more to because it's not just me, my wife and I doing our taxes. It's my wife and I and my corporation doing the taxes. So, but it wasn't outrageous in any respect, and the huge savings was a lot. So I ended up with an S corp. So can we talk a little bit? LLC, limited liability company, and that's limited liability. So that means you do have some liability. How does the LLC versus a corp, and then the S corp is another a component of that.
Absolutely. So the LLC is the entity structure that has the least amount of filing requirements. So yearly, annual report, and making sure you have kind of a separate bank account and making sure that you're signing all your contracts under the LLC. Now, an LLC can be taxed as an S Corp. So an S Corp is not an entity. It is a tax designation. It's an extra filing with the LLC. And then you can get that double taxation. So you're taxed at the business level and then again at the personal level, which allows you those deductions federally. The corporate entity, on the other hand, it's automatic that you are getting that double taxation, the corporate level, and then the personal with the deductions. You can then, as with the LLC, select to be an S Corp. The benefits have increased in recent years to be an S Corp with additional deductions being available. So it is, much more attractive than it used to be in past years.
Well, I wasn't set up as an LLC with an S corp. I think I was set up as a.
Yes. So the S Corp can be achieved both with the LLC and the corporation. It's
Okay.
more what kind of structure you want and the rules and regulations you're willing to follow. And this is when I'm talking to different clients, you have to know yourself. If you are not going to be able to follow the rules and regulations of a corporation, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, you can call it a dog all you want. The government is not going to recognize it if you're not doing the work. And
Right.
that's why some of my clients lean more towards the LLC because the requirements are less, the benefits are also less, but you can still get that S-Corp designation.
Sure. Sure. Um, how to decide which particular entity is right for you? We all have, you said um, we have to have a structure, but I know so many real estate agents, and structure is not any part of their personality.
Exactly. And that's when I'm talking to clients, I want to stress
Right.
that, the structure, you have to be willing to do it because, any attorney's willing to take your money, set up those documents, an accountant the same way. They're willing to help you create it. But at the end of the day, it is going to be you and maybe other members or other shareholders that are the ones that have to do the work. So if you're, concerned about that, an LLC can be a great place to start because it's some initial filing paperwork, setting up a bank account, and you're really good to go. Then after you get accustomed to it and you've, started really embracing the structure, you can convert to a corporation if you feel that you can, you know, handle the additional work, plus you want the additional benefits of the corporation.
What are some of those additional work? What are some of those things that have to be done?
So with a corporation, you have to have an annual meeting. Now, for a lot of people, when they're, a sole shareholder in a corporation, or maybe if there are two shareholders, a lot of it's on paper, but you have to have the paperwork for the annual meetings. You have to keep records of your business transactions, and those records have to be made available for review.
Hmm.
And then you have kind of some of the standard requirements, the annual report that you need to file for the state in order to continue to be a corporation each year.
Okay. And is that deadline March 15th? Are we coming up on that federal deadline or state deadline?
Yes, so this federal deadline and the state deadline comes up once a year on your renewal date. So whenever you create your company, you can pick a calendar year, you can pick calendar months, and you have to follow whatever you do when you set up. So state-wise, it can vary for every person, but federally, yes, we're coming up on that.
On March 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did hear that. Um, does the state let you know that it's time to file that, or is that something that you have to do and you won't hear from the state until they said, "Hey, wait a minute, it's a month late."
Exactly. You actually won't ever hear from the government, from the state, about renewing. The issue that I've had come up in the past with clients is if you try to sell or create a contract with another business, they may want what's called a certificate of good standing, saying that you are up to date on all your filings and paying all your filing fees. If you're not, you will have to file all of those back
Right.
years.
Right.
If you're 10 years in arrears, you may have to go through a reinitiation process,
Okay.
which can be um,
Right.
expensive.
Yeah, expensive and stupid because 10 years,
Yes.
I'm just hearing this, and I think it was about this time last year that I did it, but I have to look at that because I did have an annual meeting.
Mhm.
It was actually dinner with my wife, who's also a shareholder, and we did talk specifically about the business. Now
Mhm.
that particular dinner I can write off because it was an annual meeting. Um,
Absolutely.
I am sure some people press on that and they'll take their annual meeting in Aruba or something like that. I think that's might be a bit of a stretch and might be a red flag that gets you all of a sudden this company that's making X amount of dollars is taking a annual meeting in Aruba. That doesn't seem right. Should
Absolutely. I mean, you have to weigh the situation, you have to weigh the type of business that you're running,
Yeah.
the number of people. I mean, if you have a large group of people that are all shareholders, I mean, why not? Corporations do
Sure.
retreats and other things all the time.
Sure.
But I agree that if you and your shareholder are in the same state, living in the same place, and your business is real estate in Massachusetts or in any state, it's going to be tricky
Right.
to write that off.
Right.
And that's where a good accountant or CPA comes in, and they can
Hmm.
kind of tell you how far you've stretched something
Right.
within the bounds that's allowable.
Right. Um, and so a lot of this is done to protect you, to protect your assets. And I know that I know in real estate business, people can be crazy and can begin to a suit or threaten a suit for any number of correct and incorrect reasons. Um, what is the best protection? It would be the corporation, wouldn't it? Because lawyers come after everything.
Absolutely. So the corporation is definitely the best protection outside of good business practices, following rules and
Right.
regulations, and insurance. But the corporation is definitely the best because it has strict requirements that you can put down on a list and say, okay, I had my annual meeting, I filed this requirement, I have my books. Um, because you can go through that checklist, the corporation is the strongest entity. The LLC, kind of on the other hand, has minimum to no requirements. You don't need to have an operating agreement, a document that outlines how you're running your business. All you really have to do is file that annual report. The problem is limited liability is like a brick wall that you build between your business and your personal assets. Every time you follow a rule and regulation, you're putting more mortar, you're building that brick wall strong. Every time you don't, for an LLC, every time you sign a contract in your own name, or every time you take, say, a rental payment, not and don't put it into your bank account for the LLC. It's like taking a sledgehammer to the brick wall. Now, one mistake might not do much damage, but over time, you could create holes where someone could reach through from your business to your personal assets. And that's the risk you run with the LLC is if someone sues you, they're going to try and say, you're not really operating this correctly. I want to go after your personal assets. And you have to prove that you
Right.
have.
Well, let me talk about one of those because I know I'm not. I have a property management company and manage the properties for the investors that I help purchase and sell properties. And so that means I have a variety of tenants. Tenants these days are using either Venmo or Zelle or PayPal to pay. That's that's not a bank. None of those are a bank. They're just kind of pass. So what I have been doing is accepting payments through those and then directly putting them in. I understand there has to be a like the day it comes in, it goes into the right bank account. But I am not chipping away at my brick wall by using a Venmo or a Zelle or a PayPal.
Absolutely not. You've set it up correctly in the sense that you're accepting those payments, and once you are processing those payments, they're moving into your corporate account.
Right.
And that is where, whether it's coming in the form of a check, cash, I mean, cash, someone's handing it to you just because you touched it personally
Right.
doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. I think
Right.
you can look at Venmo to be the same way.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about another aspect of that, an escrow account. Now, an
Mhm.
escrow account, if you're taking escrow money as a real estate person, my understanding is that you have to have a separate account for
Mhm.
that. And I was under the understanding that if it's a separate account and it's uh, you can provide your whoever you're doing business with an understanding of what's in that account and all that kind of stuff. But what I did was I have two. clients that I work for, and I have the money in one escrow account.
Hmm.
That'd be commingling those two clients, but it came in. It's a direct covenant. I can see where it came from. Um,
Hmm.
what liability is that chipping away at my brick?
So it depends on how you manage that money. If you are, as a corporation, keeping proper books
Yep.
and you are managing the income of the assets and never releasing more funds than either of those clients have put in, then you're good. I
Yeah.
mean, law firms and other places do the same thing. We have accounts where we can put money in. Now, as long as we're not spending
Right.
clients' money,
Right.
it just needs to be properly documented,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
funds need to be available.
Yeah. Yeah. All the time. You can't borrow,
You,
and say,
you
yeah,
exactly.
I'm going to my annual meeting. Let me take some of that. No, I understand that. Um, what kind of problems have you run into with people who are like worst practices? What are
Mhm.
some of the worst practices?
It really comes down to making sure that every time you sign a document, every time you enter into a contract, that you are doing so in the name of that entity.
Okay.
That is the biggest issue that I run into because sometimes it's easy to forget that you are a separate entity and that if you sign under your own name, that is probably the biggest knock in the wall. If you sign in your own name, I can argue that we can transfer it to the LLC. But in most cases, without the approval of the other party, that's going to be damning to your
Right.
wall.
Right.
Um,
Another question along those same lines. My the agency that I work with, and I've worked with more than one. They require that they pay you in your name.
mhm,
And in an effort to get this correctly, I ask them because my contracts are signed in my name with my corporation,
mhm,
because that's the way the agency demands it, their compliance.
mhm,
Um, but all the money goes into the corporation. It's never touched by the individual.
mhm.
Um, that seems kind of like a gray area to me.
It certainly can be, but I think the saving grace in that situation is that you have consciously done something following the regulations of the business that you work with.
Right.
That business also has certain protections.
Sure.
So they don't necessarily want to be working with your corporation.
Right. They do not.
But the other people outside of your business will be working with the corporation.
Exactly, exactly. And what I specifically did, I had to sign the contracts in my name as the corporation. It was Lawrence Lawfer as, the name of my corporation. Um, but all of the funds that are being paid to me are paid directly into the corporate account, never come to me. There's never, that's just the way they get distributed. And that to me seemed like a pretty clean way to do it.
Yes, especially when you're dealing with outside people.
Yeah.
That is the cleanest way that you're going to be able to operate.
So as long as you're not trying to play any games, it's likely you won't be caught. But um, in the world of law and lawsuits, it's especially in today's litigious world, um,
Mhm.
things go crazy. I mean, eviction is one of those things. People get into situations. Can we talk about how to protect if you're facing eviction?
Absolutely. So we're talking about you're a landlord or you're managing tenants and you're the one evicting. In those cases, the the most important thing legally actually isn't business entities. It's making sure that leading up to that point, you have done everything that you're supposed to do as either the property manager or as that landlord. Because that's going to be the easiest thing that a tenant can come after. If you haven't been holding escrow funds properly,
Right.
if you haven't been, fixing or maintaining the property, properly. They're going to come after you like that. Um, but as you said, they're going to try that anyway. They're
Right.
going to start throwing accusations, making claims, true or not. And the business, they can't stop someone from making those claims, but it makes it not as worthwhile because what is in the business? For you, it's maybe some assets, maybe some escrow, but not a whole lot else in
Right.
the corporation.
Right.
And so
Even
suing
if you
you as
have
a
the whole CRM or anything, your list of clients, it doesn't help anybody because of your
no,
clients.
exactly. The only thing that that person that's suing you can go after is whatever your company owns. So at the end of the day, they can throw every claim at you, but you know that your IRAs, 401ks, your primary residency, maybe a vacation home, those aren't things that they can
Right.
attack you for, which in my experience makes them more likely to negotiate and less likely to jump straight to full blown litigation.
Yeah. So, I generally, real estate agents, they go to conferences and all of that. And there's always that real estate agent that stands up and asks a personal question all about them. I usually hate those. But here it's the show, there's only the two of us. I want to talk about a situation that happened recently. I have a was hired as a consultant to another property manager friend of mine, and he had a tenant who was very uh, forcefully. She yelled at you. She got in your face. She made accusations, always incorrect, and she's just loud. And so it's intimidating. She has chased. So the landlord hired me to help fix the things. She wants things fixed in the house. So, but he's scared of her. So I got sent and I started to fix the things in the house. Did really well. We're almost down to the end, and all of a sudden she kind of went on me in a moment, and it was so out of the blue. Um, I think mental health issues are a problem. But in that situation, instead of being triggered, I just kind of backed away.
Mhm.
So this person has a voucher, and so she can involve the BHA, Boston Housing Authority. If people don't know, there's the federal government provides some subsidy for people who are having difficulty making rents and things, and that's the voucher program. It's another layer of government helping and government paperwork. Um, but they're looking out for the tenant because they're giving the tenant. But this landlord is trying to take care of the tenant as well. But if they can't get people in there to replace things because she yells at them right inside the door, um, then what? I mean, it's like I want to fix it. I can't fix it. How do we fix it?
Yeah, so it comes down to the first thing is that the landlord needs to keep track of all of the attempts that they've made
Yeah.
to enter the property
Yeah.
and and make the fixes.
Yeah.
The hope is that if the tenant were to contact the government to assist in fixing things, say they filed a complaint, that in this case might be the best thing that could happen because that means that someone else is getting involved. The landlord has all the paperwork,
Yeah.
and an agent will be assigned to the matter, and that person can assist in a neutral way to get things taken care of.
Hmm.
Not always is being reported a bad thing
Right.
or having the person represented by an attorney. Often, I encourage tenants to seek legal representation because it gives them a better understanding
Right.
of the law and the position they're in.
Right.
Um, but at the end of the day, for disturbance of the peace or for verbal or physical situations, that person can be evicted for cause. If they are not allowing people into the property and it is causing destruction, That is an eviction for cause.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. I love these phrases, eviction for cause, you know?
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and you have to be careful with the vouchers. It does put you in there are different
right,
procedures, and
right.
you typically can't just evict someone because there
And
has to be
the worst thing in
reasons.
the world is to evict someone. People don't
Oh,
understand that. It goes on your record for the rest of your life. It
yeah.
never goes away. And you don't want to be evicted. You want to try and
No,
work things out as best you can. But
absolutely.
um, we have courts for reasons. We have attorneys for reasons. How did you choose and why did you choose real estate law versus any of the other laws?
I like the complexity of property, the regulations. There are black and white, but there's so many different areas of gray, and the people that you get to interact with. I really do enjoy walking people through this
Right,
process.
right.
That can be very open-ended.
Right. Well, for me, you were very, very helpful, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on the show, and because I have been in situations with agents, and everybody's kind of wonders about this. What should I do? And you really don't know what to do until you talk to someone. So I know we have a lot of people watching here. By the way, thank you, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. But how would people get in touch with you, Brittany, if they had a question?
So the best way is to give my office a call. I'm at Brown and Brown PC in Bedford. And the telephone number is 781-275-7267. That is the best way to ask questions, set up meetings.
Right.
I'm always here.
Well, not always, thankfully. You do have a life. I think you have children as well, don't you?
Yes, two little munchkins. Yep, yep,
Yeah,
great.
yeah. It's hard to have a work-life balance with children and a busy life, uh, but it's a good thing when you do.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
Brittany, this has been fascinating. I do have the what is he called? I have his card right here. Uh, Register of Deeds
Yes.
for NERCA. Bill O'Donnell is going to be
Mhm.
on the show soon, and
Wonderful.
yeah, he's another one, and he was talking about homestead, and he said there's a new plan which I have never heard about it. I just want to ask at the end of here. There's a consumer notification from the Register of Deeds where you can sign up for it. It's free. You can
Mhm.
sign up for it, and you put in your address so that if anything comes to the Registry of Deeds, some kind of change or something like that, you would get notification. So there are all kinds of scams out there. Sometimes people are trying to take over your property. Um, I know that's not this show, but I think that's fascinating. Had you ever heard of this notification program?
So I've heard of notification programs in general. Often they're for a fee. And I do
Right.
have to say, personally, coming from the real estate industry, it's not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
The stealing of property is a very complex
Yeah.
process that involves lots of state and federal, you know, law breaking,
Right.
that really, in my opinion, tend to outweigh the benefit of stealing someone's home that they're in. Um, but a free program that allows you to get notifications if someone does something, or let's say you're having a dispute with a contractor and they try to do something incorrectly with your property. There are lots of liens, there are procedures, there
Yeah.
are courts, but a lot of people that aren't in that industry, that aren't attorneys, don't know the proper procedures.
Right.
And that could be a wonderful thing to protect
Right.
against
Right.
you being unaware of something happening.
Right. And a lien is something that it only really matters if you go to sell your property. It has
Absolutely.
it has to be cleared up at that point. But if somebody puts a lien on your property and you're going nowhere and you can't solve the lien right at that point, it's not something that has to be your first priority. It does has to get done, but
Absolutely.
you know, you got to pay your mortgage, you got or your rent, you got to eat, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
um, don't hire people unless you could pay them. I guess it's
Yes, that is a
yeah.
good first step.
Brittany, it's just been so great to have you here. Thank you again, and thank you all of you for watching Broker Talk. I really appreciate you listening. If you have any ideas about who I should have on here, let me know. Brittany Martin of Brown and Brown in Bedford, Massachusetts. Thank you again. It's been
Thank
our pleasure to have you with us.
thank you so much for having me.